Welcome to the Pursuit of Learning podcast. I'm your host, Clint Murphy. My goal is for each of us to grow personally, professionally, and financially, one conversation at a time. To do that, we will have conversations with subject matter experts across a variety of modalities. My job as your host will be to dig out those golden nuggets of wisdom that will facilitate our growth. Join me on this pursuit. Today, on the Pursuit of Learning, I had the pleasure of talking with Terry Sidhu. Through teaching meditation, Terry has helped over 100 people manage their mental health without medication. Additionally, he has helped clients get out of unhealthy relationships and into healthy ones, launch their business, start their careers, and explore their inner spirituality. Terry's goal is to help everyone realize they can learn to meditate, which will improve their life. And that is what we talked about today: spirituality, mindfulness, meditation, and Terry's journey from a young boy in England to a meditation teacher in Vancouver, British Columbia. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Terry, welcome to the Pursuit of Learning. It's great to have you today. I want to start our conversation when you were a boy in England. In your book, you write that at events, they would always play out the same way. And two things really stuck out to me. One was the women always seemed happy, but beneath their smiles were conversations of abuse, fear, and sadness. And the second one was for the men. And you said, then, as the food went cold and the alcohol neared the bottom of the bottle, I would witness tears and fragility followed by anger and occasionally fighting, which scared me. So being able to remember back to when you were a child and having these visions, can you unpack that for us and why you think that might have always been what you saw?
Yeah, at that age, we were in a very immigrant community. Like, my grandparents came from India, my mum and dad were from India as well. And so trying to raise families and trying to survive in this new world, that was a very stark experience. It was just witnessing, like, we couldn't talk about the daily problems because the overall trying to survive and put food on the table was such a big issue, and trying to make that happen, make ends meet. There was no time to talk about what was going on underneath the surface. The only time the men, I thought, could even feel comfortable being vulnerable was when, they were forced to, thanks to drinking and getting together. As much as I think the celebrations and the things that brought us together as a family, and all these situations occurred, they were literally, it was our kind of therapy. It was, and that's what I realized. I mean, that's more now me reflecting on it, but me witnessing it as a kid, yeah, it was just a lot of emotion in every pocket of the house. And it seemed like I was the only one that could see that. And yeah, I think it's just because I was meditating and observing the world, watching the women, how they were working and they were operating, and watching the men. It's the only way they knew how to survive. It's the only way we knew how to survive. And I think that even for myself, witnessing that and observing all of that occurring, it made me realize what we hold dear to life, what we hold dear to the preservation of life, what's more important here. And that's when it came down to the crunch, there was no room for mental health issues. It was always, we've got to get food on the table. And that's all I remember it as. I was scared only because it was, these are people raising you and setting you up for the world, right? And then here they are in the most vulnerable moments. And that was a very scary thing, because I'm like, if these guys are talking about how hard it is, how hard is it going to be for us? These are the ones, and I was like a little kid. So it was, yeah, sorry, I wasn't prepared for that question. That was
Is this something you've ever talked to your mom and dad about as an adult, looking back and how that must have felt for them and how it felt for you as a child?
Yes, actually we have, and we've become more and more open about it as I've grown older and as I started learning about the world for myself. Speaking to my mum specifically, talking about kind of how she felt and her experiences, like, in an arranged marriage, moving to England, into this whole new world, new traditions, new way of living, how much of her life was suppressed, how much she could be open was limited. And my dad on the other side, it was the same. It was weird. It was like because the responsibilities were so separate, being, man, wife, woman, husband, like the roles were so rigid, and understanding that as an individual, like that you have to play this role. Both of them still kind of had this experience where they felt like their dreams were shattered, or that they couldn't be as expressive or open because of these very specific roles that they were trapped in by. And especially when I released the book, they were like, it's incredible to know that in just like one generation, you feel comfortable saying to me that I feel comfortable expressing myself and being open about this and putting this book out there. And it's inspired them, which is a really nice thing to hear my parents say, to feel like they're inspired by something that I produced. And it's inspiring to hear that, we're having the conversations now that we should have been having, when we should have felt like we had the right to have when we were younger. And that's a very exciting and an opportunity for me. I think it's great to see that with your parents and have that relationship now.
Absolutely. That's amazing to hear. And something your mom did do when you were 9, and while you were dealing with all of this as a child, is she started to teach you yoga and meditation. What was that like for you as a 9-year-old? First, the experience learning it with your mom, and second, having access to those tools that not many children have at the age of 9.
Yeah, the meditating and learning yoga. So it was a response to being bullied a lot. A lot of it was learning how to create a world in which I felt completely safe and secure in. And the way I was taught, I wish, sometimes when I talk about it, I make it sound as if it was like some sort of Mr. Miyagi type thing. But like, yeah, she told me to be one with the universe and I was floating in the air, levitating. But no, it was more, my mom was very smart. She kind of tricked me into meditation a little bit. The way she would teach it, I could be like, Mom, how can I fly, and how can I do all these things with superpowers and whatnot? And she'd like say jump in the air, and I would jump, and then obviously I'm coming straight back down. She goes, see, you can fly, you just can't take off yet. And then she'd say sit in meditation and do this, and you can learn and figure that out and how to come up with that solution. So it was always little things like that. I would ask a question, and I remember like how I am now. I always talk, and sometimes I forget to breathe, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to bring myself back to breath. She would always say this thing in Punjabi, which was sala, which means take a breath. And then going to school and being bullied and stuff, I was like, well, why do I have to breathe? Why do I have to take a breath? I questioned it, because I was like, I don't want to breathe. It seems to be pointless preserving all of this experience if it's a bit crappy. But she was like, and that's when she started getting out all the books and the text. She goes, if you want to find out why it's important to breathe, if you want to learn why you have to breathe, she goes, look for the clues in this book, these books. And that's when I started diving in. It just became this mystery world for me to uncover. It's like a choose your own adventure book. It was the best kind of lesson. It wasn't rigid.
And the more you describe her teaching methodologies, it actually does sound very Mr. Miyagi-like.
Yeah.
So just giving you bits and pieces, and then eventually it all pulls together to, wait a second, I know how to meditate. And so what was that bullying being driven by as a young man in the UK? And how did you use meditation, if you did, to help overcome it?
The bullying, I think I was a very expressive, flamboyant kid, and I didn't know at the time that I was queer, and I was trying to figure that out as a kid, and I didn't know because sexuality just isn't openly discussed, and I didn't even know that being gay was a thing until I was like in my late teens. I had all these kind of new ideas about sexuality, and the thing is, everyone was kind of painting me this picture as this individual that was driven by sexual desire, especially going from even though I was bullied at 9, but more so when I was going into my teenage years. I never saw the world in that way. I always was talking about creation. I always wanted to talk about, I was happy to talk about God. I was happy to talk about all these kind of really esoteric things. I wanted to learn about the stars. I wanted to learn about why things moved, and no one wanted to have that conversation. So I became really outcast very quickly. All the lads just wanted to play football, or the girls just wanted to sing and dance and do all this some other stuff. And we were talking primary school here. So it was very kind of, everyone had adopted their specific roles based on what they're experiencing in life. And there's me, and I'm trying to figure out why we breathe. And no one wants to talk about that. And growing up in a mixed community, an immigrant community where lots of religions, lots of Indian cultures are coming together, the more I spoke about the state of creation and God, the more I became known as the religious one. And no one wants to hang out with the religious kids, so I suppressed a lot of that. And with meditation, what I learned was the world is way more expansive in my mind than it is here. Like I realized there's more traveling, there's more experience that can have within. I mean, I learned very quickly that when I'm going to visit a memory and when I'm going to have an idea, my body isn't going there. My body is very self-aware that my body was in meditation. What I'm connecting to, I'm not connecting to as body, I'm connecting to as something else. And the more and more I exercised that, the more I realized I became a little bit more detached from my body. And so it never really was this, like, even though like I'd go home, people like pushing me on the way home and like bullying me and picking on me as I was making my way home back from school. I just knew the moment I got into meditation, this dream would be over, if that made sense. It's like I'd start my life in meditation. I wake up, yeah.
You could wake up into the real world, or a version of your version of reality.
Yeah, that's exactly how I used to do it when I was a kid.
And then as you got older, you actually started to feel like an outsider in your own Sikh community. Was that for similar reasons? Was it for different reasons, Terry?
I think with the Sikh community, you have the Sikh community and then you have the Punjabi community. So you have the religious side of things and then you have the cultural aspects of it too. And those lines are really blurred. I didn't fit the role of I didn't feel encouraged. I didn't want to grow my hair out and wear a turban. I didn't want to grow a beard, even though it was a sign of identity. I didn't want the religion to tell me what to do. I was like, I'm tired of the world telling me how to be. The last thing I want is this religion which says seek the truth, seek your own truth. And then here I am doing that. And then it's telling me to be a certain way to do that. Didn't click with me. So I was quite even my dad even sent us to the temple to learn Punjabi, and we went to Punjabi school and stuff. And I was the first one. I was like, I don't want to do this. And then with the Punjabi community, for the men, you overly masculine, very toxic, and no one's speaking about their emotions. And the only people that would talk about religion were the sants and the gurus, like inside the temple. And I neither fitted that profile or did I fit this profile. So I kind of had to carve out my own little experience. And that's where meditation was the safest place to do that in, to learn about myself from within first before bringing it out and presenting it to the world, because I had no clue what to present. There was no narrative to connect with.
And then when in this adventure did you make the decision to move from the UK to Canada?
Oh, so there's a whole a chunk between. So at the age of 16, I stopped meditating. And it's funny thing, I had this conversation not long ago that what happened at 16? I was like, oh, I became sexually active. I was like, there's a shift. There's a shift that occurred in my life. And I was like, I was trying to find enlightenment within and I found it outside. I was like, to hell with meditation. I'm going to have some fun now.
A different form of meditation.
Yeah. And so I really got consumed by the experience of life. And then I went to school, and it was at 16 the first time in English school that you can actually choose what you want to study. I mean, you can choose your GCSEs and stuff, but they're really limited choice. But when you go to A-levels and the stuff before uni, you can choose what you wanted to study. So I chose performance, media, and psychology. Was it psychology I did at A-levels? Yeah, psychology. And so for the first time I was engaged at school. I was engaged by the experiences I was having. I lost my braces, lost all the puppy fat, grew taller. So I was getting attention from all angles, even at school, because I was engaging in the lessons. And then so I just became almost obsessed with that and addicted to that. It's like validation everywhere. This is cool. Like all of a sudden I went from no friends to having friends, being the outcast to being the one that everyone wants to hang with. And I took that all the way up to the corporate ladder. Like I just went to uni, got my job. And then I remember I was at this party once. And I mean, it was fun. Like it was just sex, drugs, and music all the way to the top. It was fun. I won't lie. I mean, I'm not promoting it, but I ain't gonna lie. There were some good times. But I realized I was consumed by it. I was constantly chasing a high. I was constantly chasing some sort of thrill. And I was at this party once, and this huge fight broke out. And I remember it was that day I had this out of body experience, because it was a work event and I thought I was going to get fired the next day. I was like, there's no way I could get away with this behavior and this kind of observing this and not saying anything and just being here as a professional member of this company. There's no way. But because whatever happened, whoever I went to see signed on the dotted line and I got the distribution deal or whatever, they were like, yeah, we're going to promote you. And that's when I realized this isn't healthy for me. I'm getting rewarded for behaviors that are literally destructive, but because it's feeding someone else's pocket, it's time to move. And then my sister gave me the idea of Canada and I looked into it and It was the longest visa I could get, and I thought, why not? I'm young. I'm going to try it out and go on a little bit of an adventure. And then I fell in love with Canada, and I just moved. And when I moved back to Canada, I did start meditating again. I think I just got consumed. I mean, when I talk about the transcendental journey, there's this tier of awareness called accepting Maya, the illusion. And between the ages of 16 and 25, I was completely consumed by the illusion. I was completely gripped by the experience of life and that what was laid out for me. I was not thinking for myself. I was thinking in terms of how can I get rewarded again? How can I be validated again? How can I get a pat on the back? How can I get this reward? How can I get the next car, the next house? It was all like, it wasn't me. It was just, I was merely appeasing my body and using my body to appease others, using my abilities to appease others. And there was no connection or union or conversation about the soul or the soul's desire. And that's a huge chunk of my truth that I started to suppress. And when I moved to Canada, that started opening up a lot more.
And if in looking at Buddhist psychology, Terry, you were falling into that trap, it sounds like, of craving, of seeking, of desire, of attachment. And you'd forgotten, if you will, that the only place you can actually achieve any of that is within. Does that sound like a bit of a lost track for 8 to 9 years there?
I think, do you know what the beautiful thing is, though? When I talk about Buddhist philosophy, and whenever I'm in a class or teaching a lesson and someone talks about Buddhism to me, I studied a little bit of Buddhism when I was younger. I read a little bit about the Eightfold Path and stuff. And what I understood about the Buddha specifically is he had to go through all of those things in order to detach from them. He literally, his only path to enlightenment was that he was willing to die for it. He was like, to hell with this. Like, I don't want anything. I've had everything. I've got everything. I'm still unfulfilled. I'm still not figuring out what the point of all this is. To hell with it. I'm not going to eat. I'm just going to sit under this tree and you can take me. You know, I'm going to stay here. And then he came across enlightenment, and boom, his life, everything made sense. For me, I lacked a lot of subconscious context. I lacked any communication to communicate anything that I was feeling and thinking. I had no words to put the ideas I have in my mind together. And all of that attachment, all of that stuff. And, you know, I was meditating really well at the age of 12. But it wasn't enough to keep me from being consumed. Why was that? It's because I lacked life experience. I didn't even know how to be in the present moment. So then the moment I was pulled into the present and I was like, whoa, it can be like this? I was like, the power of meditation, I'm going to have some fun here. And then that's when I realized, oh, the body, this is the life of the body. This is it. There's not much more to life than like what I'm experiencing in these few years. Or this is me reflecting when I'm in Canada now. And I'm like, what can I do in meditation now? I mean, I've experienced all the things I experienced as a kid. I experienced everything that I've experienced in life, and I was doing pretty well. And now here I am at the age of 25, trying to think of meditation, trying to think about what use meditation will have in my life. And that's when I started connecting to all this other stuff, where it was understanding why the human experience was the way it was. I honestly don't believe, I think if we're attached to something, there's a reason to that too. It's not as easy as saying, oh, just breathe and detach from it. I know that's the technique I teach in the book, but you know, if you're consumed by an experience of life, then maybe there's a lesson in there for you to consume and learn. There's no way, I can 100% guarantee, there's no way I could be sitting here writing about meditation, talking about meditation, if I hadn't gone through those experiences. I mean, how am I supposed to relate to someone? And that's why a lot of the teachings don't come back down from the mountain, because a lot of the people who are teaching these lessons don't have the life experiences to be able to communicate these lessons and why they're there. And so, yeah, as much as I would like to say it was like this divine kind of, I became attached and then I chose and I became awakened and I let it all go. It's not the case. I'm still pursuing success. I'm still pursuing certain things. But the only difference is I have purpose and passion behind it now. I have a reason to do it. I have a reason to develop a certain specific life in order to bring my truth out into the world. I need the resources to present my creation, so to speak.
It's a very good point. You reminded me, as you said, it doesn't resonate when it comes down off the mountain. There's a story I'd heard about the Dalai Lama, and he was with a group of meditators in North America, and they were doing a Q&A, and one of the questions was, how do we overcome our inner critic, this self-hatred? And when it was translated to him, he was looking at them very strangely because that concept does not translate into their language. They don't understand how we can, in North America and the Western world, have this concept of an inner critic that hates ourselves. And so, how can he teach you to overcome that inner critic if he's never heard it? It's a bit of that mountain example. So, at 25, though, you didn't jump right back into meditation. You started first life coaching, I believe. And shortly thereafter, you were doing extremely well, but it led to burnout, is what I read. So what happened there? And how were you able to resolve that?
So I started at the same time I was life coaching, I did start meditating, but personally, just for myself as a way to manage. Because, when you get, especially when you're starting a new business and it's constant rejection, no, closed door, closed door, closed door. I was like, I need something to get my mind right. And so I would just sit in meditation. And so as I was building my life coaching practice, I was building my meditation practice back up as well. And then my life coaching practice started to do really well. And I don't know, like I was taking on more than I should have done. I've never actually had to manage people like that before, especially with mental health is concerned. I never really knew how demanding people were going to be because I used to offer like email and text support as part of my packages. And so when you're working with like 3 clients a day, everyone texting you throughout the day, you're like, whoa, when do I get time to actually figure out what I need to do and what my next step is? I was working all the time. And then it was seeing these patterns within my clients is when I started triggering more the meditation stuff. Seeing these kind of mental health triggers that are causing all, like it was almost like I could see a wave with all of them. I knew exactly which client was going to start losing their mind at this point. I knew exactly which client was going to need my attention at this point. It was like having all these kids and like paying attention to exactly all of their behaviors and why they behave the way they did. And then after having that for a little while, that's when I started opening up and started talking a little bit more about, okay, let's talk about how you're feeling. I never used to ask that question too much because it was always life coaching is about, let's set the goal, let's get you going. What's the hurdle? Let's remove the challenge, let's go. And then I just started asking because I knew it's at this point I should really ask how they're feeling because I want to know if what I'm thinking, my gut instinct is right. And then 9 times out of 10, what I thought about what my client was going through was correct. I mean, granted, I had been working them for a little while. And then so they started opening up about anxiety, fear and stuff. And so I started saying, well, this is what I do. I mean, this is the challenge I was facing. And I meditated on it and I was developing a solution to my problem. And then I brought the solution into life. And then boom, next problem occurs and repeat the process. And the more they were starting to see results, I started feeling more encouraged about meditating in my meditation practice again. And so I was meditating more and more and more. I was avoiding going down you got to understand, when I was taught meditation, I was taught in a very kind of, I was taught through religion, I was taught through spiritual texts. So none of what I was teaching in meditation in my mind was evidence-backed. Mine was like, my lessons were translated versions of what came down from the mountain as opposed to like apps or like full-on studies and whatnot. And so I never really thought to teach the way I was taught. I just thought that was just what my mom did to help me clear with bullying, and what I was going through was just childhood creativity. Like I'd lost touch with it for so long. But the more I realized that my teachings and what I was offering my clients was working for them, I was like, maybe I am onto something here. Maybe there is something to this ancient knowledge. So I just started practicing deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I was like, right, if this is true, and I wrote this in the book, if this is true, if this meditation stuff is true, then I'm going to try and hit the moon like I did when I was a kid. I want to try and detach and practice my meditation and see if I can truly let go of this experience called life and make it to the moon and just sit on the moon and feel that energy again. And lo and behold, it happened. And then I was like, okay, I can see the next step now. I can, I'm my biggest, I think everyone can relate, I'm my biggest critic. I'll question my own beliefs before anyone else. I always do. I believe it's the healthiest thing that you can do, especially when you're mood navigating through life. I question a lot of it, and maybe that comes down to my mom always telling me to look for clues and not for bloody answers in books and texts and knowledge in the world. Because always look for clues. So the moment I believe something to be true, the first thing I'll do is go into meditation and question it and really challenge it until I really understand it and why this belief came about. And so things like that enabled me to start opening up my meditation practice a little bit more and getting back into the states of meditation that I needed to. I think honestly, everything that's going on in my life today and everything that's happened, even with the meditation, even with the life coaching, is just responding to it. And I think the skill, even from 16 to 25, even though I stopped meditating, the skill I developed at a very young age was that ability to observe. I was observing my mum and dad, or the parents or the elders in my family, the fragility from the men, the abuse and the fear from the women. I was watching all of that at a young age and was able to understand, like, oh, this is the truth that I can see that no one's talking about. And every kid has that. I just sat with it and I observed it, and then I carried on observing, and then I stopped meditating and just let life hand it take over control. That one girl was giving me some attention, so I'm like, boom, I'm going to listen to her and do everything she says, and boom, next thing you know, like, I'm going into this other relationship, and I'm just literally responding to everything that I observe. And same with my coaching career, same with my meditation practice. Everything that I'm seeing and witnessing, I'm just responding to accordingly. And building that relationship with life. It's no magic power necessarily. It's just this: you witness, you observe, you pay attention, and the answers just reveal themselves. The steps you need to take are there.
And something you said right there jumped out at me is a lot of kids do have that ability. They are curious, they are observant, and then at some point along the way in their journey, Terry, they lose that. Why is that the average person loses, whether it's the ability or the desire to be curious, to be observant, to try to zone in on what is real versus what am I being told?
I think it's because of the examples we set. I mean, as young boys and girls, we're taught to behave exactly like the people that look like us. So I was fortunate, even though my mother wasn't necessarily open in her life about things she was just learning privately and things that she was curious about, she encouraged me to do so. So I had that lesson. I was constantly encouraged to be curious. And quite frankly, especially when I'm teaching kids meditation, I've noticed a few things about the way we teach our kids and the way we operate in the world. Like, for example, when do we ever ask kids, well, what do you want to learn? We just force them into this school or this education system. We're like, right, you've got to learn this, and this. When I was a kid, I wanted to study stars. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to look at the stars and study them. And and I wanted to play the violin, but those were areas that were inaccessible for, a little brown working class kid in the working class environment in the middle of Wolverhampton. Nevertheless, it still encouraged me to pursue other likenesses of that. I'm still carving out ways to find it. I'm moving to Nelson, BC, and now I can see the stars at night. It's still pushing me and guiding me in the direction that I want to pursue. I think the reason why kids are losing it is just the examples aren't there. I mean, the first book I was going to write a meditation for kids book. I was like, teaching kids meditation isn't going to work until we get the adults meditating. The Dalai Lama even once said that if we teach a generation of kids how to meditate, we'll change the world. Not true. If we encourage a generation of kids to express themselves and demand to learn the things that they want to learn about the world, that's when we'll change the world. Because then you'll teach them teach them to meditate, to continue on that path. We think meditation, like, I'm really trying to encourage people to understand meditation as this. It's not this thing that's your answer to life. It's this tool to help you find the answers and help you discover the solutions. It's a processing. It's not like I meditate now, therefore I'm enlightened. It's no, I meditate so I can become more enlightened, so I can experience more of this thing called life. And the reason why I think we lose a lot of that childhood curiosity is simply because the world tells us we can't be. It was until 16 I got to choose subjects that I wanted to learn. That's 16 years, well, maybe 14, give or take. 14 years of being told what to do. And then the moment you do something for yourself, you're rebellious, you're wrong, you're different, you're broken. There's no wonder that all these teenagers are depressed. And who's telling them the truth? One of the feedbacks I got from teaching kids meditation, like, you're so good with kids. How do you teach these? How do you get these kids to sit for 5 minutes in meditation? I was like, because the first 45 minutes were singing and dancing. I'm teaching them, like, to be expressive, and then teaching them how to be more expressive through meditation. I'm not teaching them to sit down and be quiet. I'm teaching them to consciously process their thoughts and feelings so they can communicate them. That's the difference. Like, everyone wants their kids to just shut up and be quiet and be easy to deal with. Nah, you just got to give them enough time and space to grow. There, your curiosity won't nurture. But I mean, you're a product of this world just as I am, and it's taken us how long to start asking the questions we need to ask. How long has it taken me to have this conversation with my parents? I had to put a bloody book out.
So you hadn't had many of these conversations with mom and dad up until after the book came out?
Yeah, I think it's because, I'm the youngest in my family. There's 4 of us, and I'm like the baby, the kid brother. And so no one ever talks to me about what's going on all the time. I'm always the last to find out. So, and with dad's had a few health issues recently, and I think we've just grown closer as a family. And I've been in Canada for so long too, so it's like getting to know each other once again. And I mean, at 18, I was like, I want to get out of Wolverhampton. I wanted to get out of England. So I never really returned home for a lengthy amount of time. And the last couple of years, it's been quite... And writing the book as well, I've been talking to mum and dad a lot more and saying, hey, I'm putting this book out. This is what I'm going to talk about. And so it started a lot of conversation. And it's nice just to hear from your parents. Like, it's nice to get to know you. And that's shocking. It's like how many parents feel like they don't understand their kids or don't know their kids. How long would my mum and dad have gone feeling like they don't know who I am? You know, it sucks to hear these things. And that to me says a lot about the state of the world and the way we live. And I've got nieces and nephews, and I talk to them openly every day about the craziness of my life, the good and the bad. I talk to them about the mistakes I've made. I speak to them about all the stupid and stuff and the embarrassing stuff, and I help them realize that just because I meditate, just because I sound like an enlightened fool, I am far from it. You know, I am trying my best just to teach this meditation stuff as a tool. I can't help it if you're seeing in the public eye that there's this wise character in your family. Ain't that? I like my skinny jeans, and I'll wear my eyeliner when I go out to a club. I'll party. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy this experience called life, you know. And it's fun to be able to have that energy around me in life now. And it's nice because, you know, what I had to learn at 25, I had to relearn at 25. My nephew's 18 now. He's learning that now. He's developing a mindset of what I'm at today in 33. So that gives me a lot of hope for the future. And I've noticed as my life coaching career started building, my clients were getting a lot younger too. And I'm like, this is very interesting. The young people, it's always the young people of this world. Like, I mean, you remember when you were a teenager, you probably had loads of answers, but you were told that you don't have any of the answers. You probably knew how to solve so many problems, but no one's listening to you. No one's asking you anything. So you're just there feeling like a useless lump of whatever. And like, so you rebel to get attention. You do all this other stuff. And that was me. I did the same thing. We all did. And it's because no one's listening or paying attention to nothing. Everyone's so consumed about trying to, again, appease the body and appease other people's bodies. And that's what we're taught. I did marketing at university, and I learned so much about the human experience. I was transferring all these. The reason why I became successful in my life coaching practice because I wasn't a traditional life coach. I was using all these business and marketing tools, reformulated them into personal development ones. So if this tool can turn a small little company to a massive corporation, why can't it help us evaluate and reflect on our own lives? I literally did a marketing audit of my own life, and I was like, boom, got a life coaching plan. I got a life coaching program that teach people. And it was phenomenal. But yeah, I don't know. The world is a very bizarre experience when you see how it's currently operating. And no one's meditating. That blew my mind. I was like, no one knows meditation.
Very few people actually practice it in the West, even though, you know, I'd say 30, 40 years ago, we had some brilliant practitioners who went east and brought their work back. And I know everyone says mindfulness is all the rage. In reality, there's not that many people that practice it. Maybe 5% of people.
Yeah, well, mindfulness is such a counterintuitive process. If you really think about it, I mean, most people who find their way to meditation because of mental health issues. And if your mental health issues are triggered by the present moment, why on earth are you focusing on the present moment? It's counterintuitive. You're trying to escape the thing, and here you are constantly forced into this voice in your ear saying, pay attention, be aware. And I'm like, I have been paying attention, I have been being aware, I ain't getting nowhere, you know? So, and then that's and in mindfulness is an integration. It's not necessarily a meditation within itself. Think of it like this. You're meditating for a few hours. Before you awaken into the world, you've just got all this new knowledge that you have access to. In between you breaking your meditation and awakening up, so basically the point where you stop meditating and you open your eyes, there's a little bit in there called integration. That's where mindfulness starts. Because what you're doing is mindfulness is bridging the awareness that you've raised in meditation and basically bringing that awareness and being mindful of what you do in life with that awareness intact. Let's just say you're in meditation, you meet your creator. What, you're just going to open your eyes and go about your life the way you were before? No, you need a little process to think, well, what do I say next? What do I do next? Enter mindfulness. And what blows my mind is people forget a lot of these techniques that are being taught to the West is designed to appease the Western mind. The Western mind is closed. in by ideology and lots of very intricate marketing. And the Eastern mind is following suit now. But prior to that, like, spirituality reigned in all over the world. It was like your religion, your doctrine, whatever, that reigned. We had that higher power. Granted, it got branded as this thing called God. But now that man has become God now in the world as we see it today, all you need is a few thousand followers and boom, look, I'm a deity too. It's that energy that we have in the world and that we're that we alluded to. And like, you got to understand, a Buddhist monk, if you're going to a Buddhist or a monk or someone on a mountain to get a meditation lesson, all they want is your paper so they can do their work. If I'm going to become a monk, I'm literally trying to build a life that's completely conflict free. I'm trying to build a life where I can just transcend. I just want to go and transcend. I want to be able to move consciousness beyond my body and leave. That's why I don't want to interact with the world below. Not saying that I'm higher or low. It's just that I don't want any conflict. I don't want any conscious contamination. I don't want any conflict to detach from when I'm trying to go higher. And here I am trying to deal with this conflict. What's the quickest way to deal with that conflict? Right. Oh, there's some people who want to learn how to meditate. Well, we're doing that every day. Well, let's teach them a few techniques so that we can build the resources to continue our practice. This is how ignorant sometimes the Western mind is when I start speaking to, and I'm a product of the Western mind as well. And I realize these ignorances within myself is, you see a spiritual enlightened teacher and you see them as wise, but you rarely see them as highly intellectual. You see them as wise and intelligent, and you understand that they have a lot of knowledge, but there's an ignorance that we I shouldn't speak for everyone, that even I was doing. Like, when I was younger, my mom would take me to all these pundits and palm readers and numerologists and stuff. Like, who are these weird people in rags and stuff telling me what to do in my life and that? My trainers are much nicer than that. So why am I listening? The kind of ego just kind of takes over. And if I'm trying to teach, and like, let's say someone comes to my practice and wants to learn enlightenment, but they can't get past, a problem that they've been holding on to for 6 years of their life. People say, oh yeah, I want to experience enlightenment, but they can't get past their traumas that they had from childhood. I'm not going to teach you the techniques to help you get enlightened. I'm going to teach you the techniques that can help you overcome that childhood trauma instead. And the thing is, most people who are willing to pay, like literally are willing to pay for some sort of lesson, some sort of, it becomes, I know that transaction gets blurred and it becomes this thing as well, like, someone has their one goal, the teacher has their goal and the student has their goal. As long as the teacher tells me I've passed, I'm good. And so the teacher teaches you something that you can pass at, even in your state of yoga. No one's teaching yoga properly. Everyone's too busy focusing on the exercise and the fitness, not realizing that yoga is a practice which enables you to meditate better, enables you to breathe, build that relationship with breath so that you can hold a longer breath and go into states of transcendence. No one knows, well, I wouldn't say no one knows, but the yoga is happening to meditation too. It's becoming this commercial, this idea, this thing that appeases the body. How can you teach someone a technique and expect them to get the results that you're promising them? Like transcendental, mindfulness, all of these are just techniques designed to make meditation easy. Like the yogas, like everything is just like wrapped up and like, here, now you're meditating. I do this and now I'm meditating. Check, box, done. It's not a meaty education. We're talking in terms of experiences that you can't have with your body.
It's like would you call it a Mick meditation? So
a Mick meditation.
Yeah, as an example, a lot of people say that for certain martial arts, they call them Mick dojos because they're really just trying to brand, commercialize,
yeah.
get a bunch of Westerners in, teach them martial arts and get them moving up the belt ladder and out they go. But it's really not fundamental meditations. It's really not true sensei, disciple. We're going deep.
And you got to understand as well, like a lot of these resorts or retreats and stuff, you know how many hundreds of years of abuse that they're coming out of like from colonization, from all of these experiences that they had to endure, the ancestry. Like, imagine it, you got this point where you're, accessing ancient wisdom and then boom, they take meditation and yoga out the schools in India. They take meditation and yoga out that's what got taken out of India and got replaced with like PE and stuff with things that don't serve the body and mind. You really think there's and that went on for hundreds of years. So the community that was like spiritual and all giving and teaching meditation got smaller and smaller and smaller. the resources got lesser and lesser and lesser. There was a time in India, I'm sure, where, and based on these are the stories I grew up hearing about, where you could never see a poor monk. You could never see a poor spiritual person. They were always, not that they wanted it, but they were completely gifted in gold. Like there's still stories of all these temples that are laced with gold underneath in the basements, and the thing is because they were just being gifted them. Because it was like, where do we put all this material stuff that we don't need? Just chuck it in the basement, chuck it into the temple. They create temples out of the gold. Literally, the golden temple, that's what gold was used for, to celebrate spirituality, not for wealth. And then that obviously changed with colonization and stuff. So the stuff that's being taught, I'm not saying it's all bad, there's a lot of great stuff coming out there, but let's just be realistic. Why are you learning meditation from a former monk? There's your clue. Because if you really understood meditation, I'm pretty sure I'd commit to the practice. If you really wanted to. Meditation it's hard to do when all you understand is the body and all you know about life is the body. If you had to go all the way to India to find your soul, to find your spirit, you are lost the moment, you got there. And again, that whole spiritual experience that people have when in India, kind of totally ranting and raving right now because I'm just thinking of all these conversations I've had. But it's like I'm listening to so many people who, I went to India and had a spiritual awakening. I was like, what did you do? So I got off the plane and I went through all of this and then I got to the ashram and I felt at peace. I was like, well, there's your spiritual awakening. Your senses were so overwhelmed, and you were so overwhelmed that if you never got to that ashram or that place where you were getting fed and treated like a king, if you never got to that place, you would have left India a long time ago. You would have been too much. But you beat through that, got to the ashram, got fed, got treated like a king and made it through and came back home. It's like that within itself is your pilgrimage. You went through all that chaos and you made it to that unknown place in the middle of nowhere. And then they treated you like a king and you arrived and you felt like you belonged. Well, yeah, because you paid them. And now you're coming home and you're like feeling enlightened. But tell me, are your problems still there? Have you overcome? Are you enlightened? Or are you just wearing these wonderful loose clothing now just to kind of be a part of the brand that you've just adopted? These are the truths that people don't want to hear. These are the truths that, like, for example, when I'm teaching meditation, I'm rocking up in my blazers, I'm rocking up in my ties and my shirts, and I'm like, meditation teaches you to be an individual, to really be expressive and be yourself, to not associate yourself to any material illusion except for the fact of how you want to decorate your body and decorate your life. How do you want to express yourself in the world? And if that core lesson isn't taught, good luck trying to get to the other stuff. I don't know, man. It drives me a little bit bonkers when I hear the Western perspective of meditation. I'm not saying that the Eastern is any better, but
yeah, it's easy to meditate when you're at silent retreat or you're at the ashram. It's a little more difficult to meditate and be mindful when you're living life. When it's chaotic around you, that's what you need to practice. Right? Everyone wants to go away to retreat. They want to go away to retreat and then come back and forget everything they learned.
Yeah.
What are you doing so that you can have that stressful job, so that you can maintain your family, so that you're not yelling at your kids? What are you doing to practice that? I mean, that's a bit of the gist of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's literally that whole idea of, like, when I was teaching meditation classes before COVID, I would say you're not paying me to facilitate a meditation class. I said, I'm teaching you how to meditate. Go meditate in your own time. Why would you spend money to sit in silence? Why would you spend money on me to witness you sitting in silence and in meditation? It makes no sense to me. Take the lessons and apply them into your life. Going to a retreat, not saying there's nothing wrong with going to a retreat, but let's call it what it is. It is a break from your life. And if you need a break from your life, then you need to face a bigger truth, your life. It ain't right. Change it. Have you got the guts and the will to do it? No. Meditate on developing the guts and the will to do it. Don't meditate on trying to change your life. That'll happen after. Meditate on the mindset and the solution that you need, and then implement the solution. The first solution doesn't work, meditate, get another solution, get back to it. That's why I love teaching entrepreneurs. The mindset's already built for meditation. Just got to take that stuff and put it in their minds.
It was a brilliant point right there. If you're going to a silent retreat to get a break from your life, the issue isn't the retreat, it's your life.
It's your life.
It was a very good observation, Terry. Let's take a turn here. COVID, you just mentioned it. You and I have both written that as a result of COVID, isolation, financial repercussions, lockdowns, there are already and there will be more challenges with mental health, anxiety, depression. Ultimately, we are and will see increases in suicide. Why do you think that is? And what can people be doing about it when they listen to this show?
COVID, right. This is the next threat. You'll notice from the moment you were breathing to today, there's always some sort of threat to your existence, to your way of life. If it wasn't COVID, it was a lack of money. If it wasn't a lack of money, it was your boss. If it wasn't your boss, it was this. If it wasn't this, it was that. There's always something coming for your life. Granted, even if we were living in utopia, there's still something coming for your life, because this life is not an infinite experience. It's finite. It ends in about 80 years, give or take, right? So ultimately, those states of, if you're feeling this, I'm going to answer this question in two different ways. There's you're either dealing with the response to COVID and being taught, like, basically, this is what the world is going to be like now. It's just another situation that you can't handle. So boom, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to close off. I'm going to check out of this system. I hate it. The world has gone to pot. It's no point. There was no room for me before COVID. After COVID, there's definitely no room for me now. So what's the point? And that's when I'm like, you know what? That's when you should start meditation. If you're willing to lose and relinquish it all, the best thing for you is to meditate. Why? And I've taught several people who are suicidal how to meditate. And they're, again, easy people to teach how to meditate. Why? The important rule is detachment. If you've got nothing to lose and you're willing to jump off that bridge, or, get that knife out and slit those wrists, if you're willing to do what you say you're going to do when it comes as a response to this COVID, I was like, before you do that, let me show you a different way to do it. I just want you to sit quietly, and anything that comes in the mind, just reject it. Don't even want it. As far as you're concerned, you're leaving life anyway. So anything that comes in your mind, any fear, any doubt, any beautiful notion of hope and joy, let it go. Just let it go. Don't want to be here? Keep retreating back. Oh, you're hungry? You're responding to the hungry? Do you want to eat? Or I thought you were willing to die 5 minutes ago. Reject it. Keep rejecting, and watch where your mind goes. Watch what you realize and watch what you learn. Because what happens is you let because things that are driving people to those really dark, dire choices or ideas or responses to what's going on in the world, it's because they're ultimately attached to something that needs to be let and go of. Like this, there's an attachment rooted in all misery. I can pretty much guarantee most people who are dealing with any sort of mental health issue is because they are stuck with the body. They only know the body. They can't see life beyond in the Eastern practices, suicide is the most pointless and childish thing you can do, because it's like, oh, you're only getting rid of your shell. You're only getting rid of your body. You're going to have to repeat this whole thing over again, over and over. And that's reincarnation. And I know that not everyone believes in such value. But let me put it this way. Look at how much data, how much you had to evolve as a human being to be able just to do this. You know how much data is in your hand just so it can move like this, and what needs to go on for your hand to do this? That's all the data, all the cells in this hand or in your body have gone on a journey to pick up data to be able to do all this and create this in a very specific way. If you think that you just came into this world and had this body and this body was there for you ready to go, what's the point in believing in evolution? Then yeah, this is the only experience you're ever going to have. You always existed, humans always existed from the beginning of time in that case then. It's irrational. So anyone who's thinking, yeah, this world is tough, it's too hard, I'd say leave it behind then. That's where I say don't be mindful. Go into your meditation and just consciously leave it behind. You don't want to deal with COVID? Don't deal with COVID. You don't want to deal with the problems? Don't deal with the problems. Keep going higher. Keep taking consciousness to a higher realm. Reject anything that's trying to grip you and pull you back. Reject anything that's trying to grip you to make you feel like you got to leave. It's like this opposite way. Instead of, honestly, and this is we want to put a disclaimer here, and I'm not promoting this at all, but I was speaking to one person a few years ago, and I said, well, instead of jumping off a bridge, just meditate. So just do that instead. Just reject everything and just sit in meditation. Just close your eyes, keep breathing, placing breath ahead of every thought, feeling. I said, I promise you, you'll arrive at a point of clarity where you will realize, oh, this was just a minor stress that I'm responding to. That's gone bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. What you're learning to do in meditation is you have this overbearing experience that's really making life very difficult. and you're chipping away at it. You let go and you keep going down until you hit the root of the problem. And then you start realizing, like, this tiny little thing in my mind, in my life, is mushrooming out and creating this massive, it's just layer up. And in meditation, you're bringing that down to that core root of the problem. And once you get to that core root of the problem, you have your understanding. The only question you need to ask at that point is, well, what's the source of that creation? Why was that there? How did that come about? And now you're processing consciously. You're dealing with the thing that you're supposed to go to therapy for. You're dealing with the thing that you're supposed to navigate through. And if suicides and stuff are all going up, I think it is because we live in a very convenient time. Literally, COVID's shown us how convenient life is. You need food, get it delivered. You need this, get it delivered. Anything you need comes to your front door now. Life couldn't be any more convenient. And therein lies a problem. You now have no reason or excuse. Like, everything can come to you if you want it. Life has become the most easy experience. I mean, I think if you look throughout history, life has never been easier than it has been today. The fact that me and you are having a conversation like this is incredible, right? So it's easy. Life has become so convenient. So what does one do with a convenient life and no purpose? It's going to make anyone depressed. What am I here for? If everything, like, I'm just here, what am I here just to eat and shit and sleep and shower and repeat? Yeah, that's, that definition of insanity. That's what's driving everyone mad. They're not sure why they're doing this. They're not sure why they're here. And COVID, for many, many individuals, it's triggering that, like, oh, I guess this is the thing. This is what I'm going to have to do. And this is not everyone. I'm just speaking to just the conversations I've had. Obviously, I can't speak for the entire population of the world. But the thing is, once that convenience is threatened, what else is there to live for? It is like we've got everything that we ever need, most of us anyway. And even then, if that's now getting threatened, I don't know. I think it's just the lack of having any alternative way of existing. We're constantly told how to live. We're constantly told how to be. Now we're being told what to wear, how to navigate, and how to interact with people. That was our freedom before. Now we don't have that anymore. So it's just getting more and more, we're relinquishing more power, and life is becoming more convenient. And there's people who can't, it's difficult to handle that. I don't know. It's a big topic to really wrap up in a little bit.
Yeah, I'll throw something at you and see what you say. And because I heard it a bit in what you said, and it's in a bit of how I've been thinking. And part of it's also a bit of a difference between Eastern psychology, let's call it meditation, mindfulness, Buddhist psychology versus Western psychology. And when you think about a lot of mental health issues, a lot of it can generally come down to, and you were describing this, is really flawed thinking. And so our version of reality, what we're attached to, isn't actually reality, right? I'm tied up and attached to something that's untrue. And I just keep ruminating on it. And when you think about the pre-COVID world, it might not have been great, but so much of what people did, Jerry Seinfeld talked about this on comedians and going for coffee, in cars going for coffee, is so much of what we do is just passing time. And so pre-COVID, you were able to go visit people. You were able to go to sporting events. You were able to go to a concert. You were able to go to this, and this. And what that was really doing was allowing you to stop thinking about that flawed thinking that was in your mind. Now you have COVID and you're isolated. You're alone with those flawed thoughts, and they're spinning day in, day out. What you would teach, well, let's start with Western psychology. Western psychology would say, well, why do you have that thought? Let's go back to your childhood. Let's figure out what happened to create that thought in you. And let's work with your inner child to make you don't see it that way anymore. Whereas Buddhist psychology or mindfulness would say, well, let's just fix your thinking. Let's just learn to let it go.
I think even that's got translated. I think in Eastern psychology or Eastern approach to that wouldn't necessarily be, in the Western, you've got, well, what's driving that thought? What experience is driving that thought? In Eastern, it'll be who is driving that thought more so. How are you identifying self? As body? Is body having that thought? Are you existing as mind? Is mind having that thought? Is the soul having that thought? Who? What realm? The only thing missing between a healthy mind and a non-healthy mind is realization, self-realization. Understanding how one exists as self. How does one identify self? And in Western psychology and Western philosophy, it's all limited to the 5 physical senses. That's why there's so much technological advancement and scientific breakthroughs in Western philosophy and Western approaches and Western culture, because we're obsessed with creating something that we can tangibly experience. Whereas Eastern culture, it's like, well, what do we need to create? What needs to be created in this world? And let's start there. It's just raising beyond your 5 physical senses and realizing, oh, where's this threat coming? What this threat to? And ultimately in Eastern, I've noticed, actually, this is one thing I actually noticed growing up, is at home, we were never taught to fear death. We was never, anything that we learned about India, about Punjabi culture, about Sikh culture, about Hinduism, about Buddhism, about Jainism, about Taoism, about any of those Eastern philosophies that I understood, not one of them made me fear death. They were like, embrace it, your journey begins, la 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 la, this is your life, enjoy it, make it, this is your 80 years this is your dream here, this is your present moment, be here. Whereas when I went to school and started learning about Christianity, for example, hell, death, fear, be good, it was constant to be afraid of death. I think in Western psychology, if we just change that approach and be like, okay, so you're dying, cool. Like, the biggest threat you can make to someone to get help is to kill yourself. In Eastern, suicide was not a common thing growing up. I never really understood suicide until I started branching out into like the Western experience of the world, like making friends in Western culture. In Eastern culture, mental health wasn't an issue. Oh, you got a mental health issue? Go to the temple. You got you're struggling in your mind, go speak to a spiritual leader who can actually teach you, the things you need to recollaborate your mind and realize and teach you to go above your body. So, and it's hard for me because I'm a product of both. So it's constantly like battles between challenging one or the other. And the beautiful thing is there's benefits in each of them. There are complete benefits. If they just started working together instead of opposing each other, we would have a beautiful experience of life. But all the Western approach is to impose ideology. The Eastern approach is to challenge ideology. So when one force is imposing something and another force is challenging it, there's going to be constant conflict. So how do we move past that?
There's more and more programs, and I've got a book up on my shelf I turned and looked at as we were talking about. There's more and more programs that are looking to fuse East meets West with psychology, whether it's the integrated studies, whether it's Naropa University, mindfulness combined with Buddhism, as an example. More and more schools looking to bring the East and West together and say, hey, look, it's not just psychology. There's also this, and this that can be used to help people. And so I think we will see more and more evolution of that with time. But let's dive into some of the book, and let's maybe take our listeners through some of your concepts in teaching meditation. So the first thing for our listeners, when they're looking to set up an environment to be conducive to meditating, is there anything you suggest that they look to do?
Depends on what level of practice they're at. If they're in a really beginning stages, like if you're brand new to meditation and you want to get into meditation, create a space where you can consciously observe. And I mean that in more of a literal sense, like literally get a seat or a sofa and stuff and position it against a window that you can look outside. Start your meditation there. Practice and train your mind to observe. Get a cup of tea, get a blanket, sit in your cushion and just look outside that window and be very aware that you are observing something. That's where I would say anyone start. Just create a little space like that where you can just sit and consciously observe. When it comes to meditating a little bit more formally, I highly recommend creating a very kind of low space that doesn't have too many distractions. And I would say go spa-like, go relaxation into it. Put some light music in the background, maybe change the lighting a little bit. And, if you really need all of these, and these are for like the early stages of your meditation practice, you're going to need these things to kind of help you ease into it. It's kind of like why you need to go to the retreat and you have to, create that little retreat space within your own home if that's what you need to separate. But the ultimate tool is training. And I highly recommend to start your meditation practice. Just go navigate through the world and see how long you can last before something takes your breath away, whether it's good or bad. Consciously breathe for like the entire day and realize, oh, so-and-so, you lost track of breath because you were in conversation. Oh yeah, look at that sign, look at this distraction, look at that. How many things are constantly taking your attention away from your breath? So that's where I would say start your meditation practice and start developing your being. The whole world is your meditation studio. The whole world is your meditation space. If you want to start at home, make it relaxing and make it as comfortable as possible. Avoid damp, dark rooms. Think logically, how can I keep my body in this state comfortably? If you're sitting on a cushion, make sure it's comfortable. Comfort, like the human body, and this is again when teaching meditation, is the human body just needs to be in a place where it can just sit and think. Just separate. All you need to do when it comes to meditation is separate your living from your thinking. You can't observe through your 5 physical senses and process all at the same time. I mean, it will, because it'll trigger certain subconscious, meaning that's a chair, that's a light, that's a this, that's a that. But ultimately, life is to be had at the 5 physical senses, right there with your eyes, with your sense of smell, your hearing, your taste. And you're supposed to engage all of those things. And when they're fully engaged, you're present. But if you're trying to think at the same time, you're trying to experience and process, and you're doing 2 things at once, and life's going to get harder and harder and harder and harder too. So just create a space for yourself where you can sit and process consciously, observe, just to stop and not do nothing, but to do nothing. Well, it's going to be very taboo here, but just to do nothing with your body, like to be able to be in a comfortable enough position to sit and be like, okay, I'm just going to think about this. It's the equivalent of when life gets hard and you need to go out for a walk. Create that for yourself in some form or fashion in your life. Create an opportunity where when life got tough and you needed that break just to go for a walk to clear your head, that's the energy you need behind your meditation setting and your meditation space. A place where you can just be and not be disrupted by the experience of life. Just be like, okay, this is my out.
Perfect. So create your little spa-like environment that allows you to do that. And now we're going to talk about your 5-step process. Not 5-step, but the 5 keys for you in meditating. You talk about breath or breathe, position, lock, meditate, and integration. So for breath, you talk about the importance of a control breath. Can you let us know what you mean by that concept of control breath?
It's very scientific, actually. Do you know how in science, everyone's done this? I think everyone's done this at school. In science, you're learning to grow plants, and you have that one control, which has everything perfect. And then you have all these other variables that you mess up. I hate take the light away from this one, take the water away from this one, So your controlled breath is indicative of your control state. So think of it like this. Because meditation can take you to so many different places. You're only going to believe me once you experience it for yourself. What I'm teaching with breathing is basically learn how to restore control. Whether it's mental health issues taking you over, or whether it's, some experience in your mind that's just like so radical and random that it's just taking you away. You need to be able to pull yourself out of it and restore your control state of being. How do you measure your control state of being? You breathe with control. When you're breathing consciously and with control, everything else in life comes second. Everything, literally, because you have to breathe before you can do anything else. So if something's taken your mind where you're feeling like you're mentally challenged, or say your stress or an anxiety or fear comes up, if you're breathing, you're not dealing with the fear, you're breathing. You're back to your control state. So then you can go to your fear and be like, okay, I see you. And pull yourself out and really get to a state of control and be like, what's missing? What's happening between this control state and that? What's missing? What's occurring? And there you raise awareness, and that awareness, then you pull it in and you integrate it in. It's a whole process, but that controlled breathing is just to restore your control state of mind. So you can always return to a state of equilibrium within or without, depending on how you integrate it.
And so controlled breathing or your control breath may be different for everybody on what their control breath is.
100%. I say, think of it like this. If you could only breathe one way for the rest of your life. If I said, that's it, you can choose, everyone choose your breath. This is the only way you can breathe for the rest of your life. How would you breathe? Would you breathe fast like that? Or do you think that's a sustainable breath? Would you breathe long and deep and slow? And your control breath will evolve. As you evolve, you'll grow it. It's like your basic. What's the first thing the doctor checks when you're in a hospital? What's the first thing the doctor checks when you were born? What's the first thing you do in life? You breathe. So you're constantly returning to that very raw experience of life. And if you're talking about transcendence, you need to be able to understand your breath to a point, because transcendence is really locating the source of it. Where is this breath coming from? Where is this prana coming from? Where is it? Why am I breathing? Those are the questions that are going to get you to enlightenment, not seeking God.
And Terry, have you read much or done much work with box breathing? And
Yes.
is it, if that's the breath that gets them to the spot, that gets them calm, are you fine with that being the control breath?
Can you do that for the rest of your life?
I often find, so I've realized I've somewhat chosen that for my control breath. So when I do meditation, I go to box breathing. If I'm in meetings and I'm conscious of my breath, to your point of being conscious of it, I choose that as my form of breathing. And so it's whenever I'm conscious of my breath, I go automatically to box breathing, as an example.
Box breathing. So as you evolve your meditation practice, box breath is a detachment exercise. Breathe, hold, exhale, hold. What you'll learn in meditation is what you're doing in those peaks. And so when you're at the top of your breath, when you're holding it, what are you doing in that peak? What's happening in that peak? There's an exercise I teach whereby I say, if you take one conscious inhale all the way up, as if you're with your breath, you're climbing a mountain to the top of the mountain. Once you're at the top of the mountain, think about what you want from life in that moment. How long do you need to hold your breath to understand what it is? And that's how you learn if you're asking for too much from life. If you're at the top of the mountain and you're struggling to breathe, you're asking for way too much from life. Come back down, start again. And that's where the box breathing it'll spoil you. It'll spoil you. It's a great start, but you want to be able to just go and know exactly how to restore your mind at the top of inhalation. Know exactly what state of mind you need to arrive at by the time you finish breathing. Holding your breath, I honestly love box breathing because it helps, especially when I'm teaching new meditators how to meditate. Box breathing is just a way because there's a lot of activity consuming you, whether it's out here in the world or in your mind. That hold, it's almost like restricting life from that experience. You're restricting life from what you're dealing with. So as a result, it's effective. But if you're having to restrict life from what you're experiencing, then guess what? You're gonna have to change what you're experiencing.
It's a very good point. And it's exactly what you say is I have a very active mind. And so what I've realized when you say just concentrate on the breath, that can be hard. When I say, okay, I'm going to do my deep breath. And then in that space where I'm holding, I'm either going to do Name Padme Hum, or I'm going to do a metta meditation. And then I'm going to breathe out. And then I'm going to rinse and repeat over and over. And I can't think if I'm focused on that, whether it's the mantra or the metta meditation.
So you're separating your life experience from your breathing. So what you're essentially doing is you're replacing an experience with an experience, as opposed to saying, yeah, the breathing is the experience and everything comes second. But if you're using your breathing as a separate tool from what you're experiencing in life, what's happening is you're just like, let's say your stress and your breath are equal and the same now. It's like, I'm checked out of the stress and I'm focused on breath, and my breath is now my priority, and I'm doing this process so I can return to my stress. Is that what's happening? Because if that's happening, that again is counterintuitive to a meditation. You breathe and then you get to a point of control where you'll be like, okay, stress, I'm looking at you. I'm breathing this way and you're stopping me from breathing this way. Why? Why do I need to stop, and why do I have to strangle you? Why do I have to take life away from you? What is it about this experience that is making me having to go to this ritual when it comes to my breath? Breathing is the most simple, most basic thing you can do in your life. And if it's overcomplicated, if you have to breathe, literally controlled breathing is just an inhale and exhale comfortably through your nose. Why through your nose? It's your primary breathing tool for your body. If there's problems here, then you've got to resolve that problem first before going anywhere else. Once you're able to breathe consciously, you are constantly measuring. And sometimes it's that fear as well, knowing, because the conscious breath is the only tangible truth that you have is your breath, really. You know, your beliefs, your ideas and stuff, they're your own. They're based on what your experience is. They're in your subconscious mind. They're all illusion. The only tangible evidence of life we have is breathing. And so if we're complicating that aspect of it, it's going to be even more difficult to navigate through to higher states of awareness or even move past the problems that we're dealing with. If we just focus on sustaining a type of breathing that just feels comfortable, that doesn't feel like it needs to be restricted, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're restricting your breath when you're in comparison to this experience that you're having. So there's something in your life or something that's occurring in your life where you have to literally restrict your breath to restore control. That's a clue. That's a huge clue. And it's what you're doing in that it's why you're holding your breath, or why you feel your need to hold your breath, is the first place where you would look, because there's a problem here. I can't feel as if I can just quickly come down this mountain. I have to take a moment up here before I come back down. Why? And I need to take a moment before I come back up. Why? And start asking those questions. And you start realizing, oh crap, there's some stuff I need to deal with here.
I love it. I'm going to start asking those questions tonight. For you might be able to see it because you can see on the camera the other downside of the box breathing. I was doing it in the steam shower, and I actually passed out and fell on the tiles and cracked the head open. So that's the scar. So maybe I learned maybe I should reduce the box breathing. My box breathing didn't work in that incident, Terry.
Box breathing is good when, think of it like this: when you're breathing, you're giving life to something. When you're not breathing, you're taking life away. You got to figure out what you're taking life away from.
That was extremely insightful. I like it. So my work is to figure out what I'm taking life away. And I think I have some concepts of what it is, so I'll explore that. And so the next thing you talk about is position, the importance of an upright spine, and you also talk about the benefits of yoga for improving your ability to hold your meditation position. I threw 2 or 3 things at you right there, but can you unpack all of those for the listeners on setting up their body position?
The reason why positioning comes second after breathing is because, think of it, if you found your control breath or your control state of being, you need to position your body to sustain that way of breathing. Just like you need to position your life to sustain that way of breathing. Just like you need to build your life to sustain that way of breathing. You literally breathe and you build your life around it. So it's no different in your meditation position. So you breathe to get in control, and then you position to get comfortable. And then talking more about that position, the upright and self-supported spine. So the importance of that is to remain conscious. The moment you rest, the moment you lie down, congratulations, you'll go into a state of unconscious processing, also known as sleep or napping or resting. So keeping the spine upright and self-supported keeps your body conscious enough in order to store the conscious processing that you're doing. It's the difference between, it's kind of like putting your computer in standby. It's still doing everything it needs to do, but it's most of the activity your computer's doing, it's off. It's just focusing on the bare minimum to keep the data flowing and keep you in place. And this is where it gets really esoteric, because we're talking about the knowledge of your chakras as well, need to be able to flow through your spine. The spine is basically, think about it, what's the one thing that connects head all the way to the rest of your body? It's your spine. So there's a lot of data being channeled up and down that back of yours, and you want to make sure that the wire is not constricted. There's no data. It's like you don't want any of that data to be clotted. You don't want any of the wiring to break. You want to be able to process information all the way from root to crown quite simply. And yoga, so what happens is, let's say you're meditating for 2 minutes and you notice that you get an ache. Now you know how to guide your yoga. You know, I need to figure out how to resolve this ache. Lower back pain, I can't sit in meditation because of lower back pain. Well, now you know what yoga you need to do to resolve that back pain. You are literally, the thing is, the beautiful thing about position, you can learn more about your life just by repeating those 2 steps, breathe and position. Because you're learning now how to solve a problem that's restricting you from experiencing what you need to experience. If you're struggling to sit in meditation because of some sort of issue with your body, then your first solution that you need to implement in your life is to resolve the situation that's keeping you from sitting in meditation. Resolve that issue, listen to that pain point. Consciousness is obviously moving there for a reason. That's all that pain is. It's just consciousness moved to wherever the problem is in your body. The human experience couldn't be any easier. You know when you need to eat, you know when you're in pain, you know when you need to drink, you know when you're cold, you know when you're tired, you know all of these things. You just got to listen and pay attention and do the next thing that is followed forward. If you want to get out of dire situations like homelessness and stuff, follow with the basics. Right, I need to eat. I got to figure that out first. I need to sleep. I got to figure that out first. Don't worry about like the clients who have fallen from when working. I'm thinking now of few life coaching clients who have hit the top and then made it to rock bottom again. And I'm like, oh, I see. So you're scared. You see, you've lost everything. Have you? Life's over, is it? Are you eating? Have you lost all that too? Have you lost the ability to sense pain? Have you lost your ability to breathe? You haven't lost everything. You've just lost all the material illusion that kept, you going to have a reason to live. Pay attention. There's a reason why you lost it. There's a reason why it had to go, because clearly there's something much greater for you to find, or something much more useful for you to create. Honestly, the truth will never fail you. It will never fail you. And even just that step position teaches you that. Breathe, listen to your body. What does your body need? It's your one tool that enables you to do this thing in the first place. If you're going to bypass that to go into enlightenment, then you're just ignorant. Take care of your body. Listen to the pain points and evolve your yoga accordingly.
So as a simple example, I'm meditating, left leg keeps going to sleep. Okay, well, is there a tightness in your hips? Is there something wrong with your X or Y in your sitting position all day at work? And so should you be doing yoga on how to open up the hips, on how to improve the flexibility of the leg joints so that when you sit, your leg stops going to sleep and you maybe someday can achieve lotus position. Okay, that's a very good point. And
so think of it like this. Here's consciousness at the top of my head. I can only make it this far before my leg falls asleep. Fix your leg, now I can go this far. Oh, another pain. Fix that, now I can go this far. If you're raising consciousness and awareness, if you want to process your deep childhood traumas, for example, and you can't get past your leg falling asleep, probably needs to fix that first. Maybe that's the reason why you can't process all of that.
Are there any forms of yoga that you specifically recommend to pursue that assist in working on the body?
Kriya yoga. There's a yoga called Ashtanga yoga. I can never pronounce it right. But Kriya yoga is probably the best ones because you basically create the yoga based on the pain points that you're experiencing. For example, if you got tightness of the hips, then your whole yoga is about that.
And that's create yoga?
Kriya. Kriya. It's akin to like Kundalini yoga, but Kundalini yoga, you're talking more kind of meditating to reach states of ecstasy and all this wonderful third eye opening stuff, which is completely pointless if you're struggling in life. You know, Kundalini is like it's like a lifestyle. That's you now moving towards Buddhist monk guru level of life. And you kind of like, I'm done with the whole 9 to 5. I'm done with the whole making money material. It's time to get some transcendence. And then boom, you can start with your Kundalini yoga and away you go. But basic Kriya yogas, Ashtanga yoga is really good. Just honestly, even just going to a regular yoga studio. Yoga is such a fitness now. You can even get some of the results doing Pilates. Same with meditation. People think you go to one yoga class and, I went to yoga and I hated it, thinking that same yoga class is like that for every yoga class. It's not. Keep trying different ones. Honestly, I highly recommend to all your listeners, find out all the yoga studios that are in your area, obviously when COVID restrictions are lifted. Get your one-time pass, try it out. Try them all. It's not about finding the right yoga. It's about finding the right teacher that understands your problems. And they'll help you. If you're just going to a random class that says, do this, do this, do that, you're wasting your time and money. You can do that at home. You can resolve a lot of those pains. When I do yoga, I just sit and listen. I'm like, right, what am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to touch my toes? Where's the pain? Where was the pain? And then you start moving your body and seeing how it alleviates and releases the pain. That's yoga. And only a yoga teacher will teach you that, how to listen to your body as opposed to teaching you a move. Like listen to your body. And that's what you'll notice. Every yoga teacher says it.
Listen to your body. Yeah, of course.
Listen to your body.
Move around, see what it's telling you.
Yeah.
Right? What are you hearing? What are you learning?
Yeah.
There's the tightness. Why don't we explore that? Why don't we go into it?
The rest of the class is going in downward dog. You stay where you are. Resolve that issue first.
And are there any online classes that you're a fan of?
Yeah, there's this YouTube channel. He's actually from Edmonton. I think he's in Edmonton now. And I just love the way he teaches it because he's just so chill about it. Akhanda Yoga. There we go. That's the one. Akhanda Yoga. Akhanda. I forget, his name doesn't pop up for me, but I've got his videos up here. I love those videos. They really help. They've helped me when I've struggled to get into meditation and stuff. And yeah, he's got loads of free videos on YouTube. Watch them, start practicing, get into it, enjoy it.
Love it. I just started my yoga practice recently and it's feeling tremendous and the body definitely feels like it was breaking. I went from a run streak of running every day for 6 months. And then as soon as I started the yoga, I realized the run streak was doing tremendously bad things to most of my lower body. And yoga's helping to slowly work those things out, Terry. So one of the things you talk about often, and part of it may be the body, but often when people drop into meditation, they get distracted, they get up, they walk away, meditation over. How important is it to be able to step in and out of meditation until we can do it for longer and longer periods?
The aim is not to meditate for a length of time. Trying to meditate for 2 hours, trying to meditate for 6 hours, trying to meditate for 10 minutes, that's no accomplishment. Congratulations, you can sit in a state of meditation for that long. The accomplishment is what you learned during the time. The approach to meditation is not, when I teach meditation, I'm not necessarily teaching you how to meditate. I'm teaching you how to detach so that you can meditate. I can't teach you how to sleep. It's that same kind of, like if I said, do this and sleep, and boom, you're asleep. If I could teach that, there'd be no problem with this, building this thing. I'd have lines outside my door, I'm sure. But no one can teach you how to meditate necessarily. No one can teach you how to enter that meditative state. They can only teach you how to arrive to a point of stillness so that you are effectively meditating. It's like detachment is what you're essentially exercising here. And we've got this understanding of trying to achieve stillness, that's where your meditation begins, when you've achieved that stillness. It's like, finally, I've got separated from all of the crap that's distracting me. And now I'm still, I'm just going to wake up and come back into life. No, you just started. It's about now, where do you want to go that you've attained that stillness? Getting into meditation, it's about learning how to detach. So we spoke about breathing and positioning. Those are the first fundamental components. Know what your control state is so that whenever you're distracted, you'll see it in your meditation. You'll sit down, you're trying to meditate, and then someone comes through the door. Now you're away from that controlled breath. That distraction, that thought, or that feeling from the door has completely gripped your experience of breathing. Like it's taken your breath away. So you return back to breath. Reposition your body if you need to, because sometimes it's the tension in the body that's keeping you. That's the distraction, the tension in the body. Reposition your body if you need to, get comfortable. And then there's a step called locking, which is like ritualistic at the beginning, where you roll your eyes up towards the center of your mind. And don't strain here. Again, you don't want any tension in the body. And then you lock, and basically once you've locked into your meditation, you're effectively meditating. What happens is that state can only last for a few seconds, maybe, before you get distracted again or something else occurs. And then, boom, you go back to breath and you start the whole process again. And you keep on repracticing that cycle. It's not about how long you can sit in stillness. It's about how long you can repeat that cycle until that state of stillness is automatic and you can strengthen it. That locking process is like, you'll meditate. So don't think of one meditation sitting as one meditation. Think as one meditation sitting as several meditations, but each time you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. Just like sleep, it's not one solid cycle. It's cycles and cycles and cycles and it all collectively comes together as one sleep. Your eyes are closed for 8 hours, but you're going through these cycles of up and down, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, REM, back down. Same with meditation. Breathe, position, lock. Now you're meditating. Millisecond, distraction occurs. Okay, back to breath. Breathe, position, lock. Another distraction. Go again. Until you can get to a point where that meditative state, step 4, is longer and longer and longer. Why does it need to be longer and longer? Well, that's dependent on what you're trying to process. If you're trying to find the meaning of life, then you're going to need to sit there for a length of time. But if you're trying to just, figure out a solution to an everyday problem, you can probably do that in 10 minutes. It's really about why you're meditating and what need there is for it. Honestly, I want to see a world where we don't need meditation. That would be wicked. Can you imagine that? A world where there's no problems. The thing is, that world will then ultimately be our demise as well, because if we've come to a state of equilibrium, if we've arrived at utopia, the cycle has to restart again. And there's the end of life as we know it. But that's going to a whole different realm.
So what you're describing there, it's almost, Terry, like when you think about how people react to things and you look at the concept of a stimulus and a response. One of the things you learn through coaching, you learn through mindfulness, you learn through psychology is technically in between that stimulus and that response, there's a gap. And what we're really trying to do is increase the distance between the stimulus and the gap, or the stimulus and the response, so that we can make a conscious choice of how to respond, if we respond at all. And when you think about that meditation, breathe, position, lock, meditate, breathe, position, lock, meditate, what we're trying to do is increase that time that we're able to be in that meditation, so that whatever problem we're trying to solve, we can get to it without the distraction, without the, oh, wait, I'm not meditating. I was meditating. And it's what you talk about there. My teacher was trying to explain it to me, and sometimes I would get lost on this one. I'm meditating and I'm focusing on my breath. And he said, well, no, at some point, we don't even want you focusing on your breath. If you're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on your breath. You're not meditating yet. It's that stillness that you achieve. He said, sometimes you'll notice you're focusing on your breath and then all of a sudden you're not focusing on anything at all. It's just still. That's where we want you to get to, that stillness. And when you get distracted from it, that's when we want you to come back to your breath. Get back to that stillness and rest in that as long as you can. When you say breathe, position, lock, meditate, that meditate is the stillness. That's where I'm trying to rest and reside.
Yeah, that's where you do your process. It's almost like, how can you be consciously still? That's why this gets really difficult to translate, because when we think of stillness, we think nothing, Think of it like it's recognizing yourself that you are at a place where you can go in any direction that you want to go. Where do you want to go? There's your stillness. It's knowing that moment where you're like, I'm here, I'm still. Where should I go next? What do I do now? What do I do in this position? That's where we struggle to meditate, because we don't know what to do in the meditation. Are we trying to transcend? What are we trying to do? And that's what's missing in a lot of the Western education, is that, what do we do when we're in stillness? I can get there many times, but what the hell am I doing there? Because what happens, that's ultimately why you get distracted. Because in that state of stillness, it's so unfamiliar that we just don't know where to go or what to do with it. In my lessons for the higher meditations, I don't teach what creation is or the meaning of life. Forget that. That's for you lot to figure out. What I teach is how to navigate, like how to map out the mind, how to understand and recognize where you are in stillness. Are you sitting in stillness in memory? Are you sitting in stillness in the present moment? Are you sitting in stillness in a predetermined state for the future? Where are you existing when you're sitting in stillness? Don't know? Okay, I'm just going to get distracted by this memory then. I'm going to get distracted by the door. I'm going to get distracted by this. It's almost like you get to a point where you're meditating, practicing enough where you realize that you relinquish control over that state of stillness.
That's a key word right there, is control. Because you can go back, you talk about the ability, almost like an elevator, but I picture it on its side. The ability to go back to the past when you're in that state, the ability to go forward to the future, to go up to transcendence, almost like a Willy Wonka elevator, if you will, because it can go in any direction you want. But the key, Terry, is going in the direction that you're choosing, not being dragged there by an errant thought.
I wouldn't even say it's more just being conscious of that. Being more conscious that you are in a state of stillness and that you have complete choice and control in that moment. Instead of, I've arrived at stillness. Hey, where's my golden star? Your meditation begins in the moment that you are still. And what people are failing to achieve when they arrive at that stillness is knowing what to do when they're in it. And that's what needs to change in the education of meditation. And that's why I said at the beginning stages, when you arrive at that stillness, find solutions to your problems. Create the state of calm that you need to counteract the challenges in your life. Meditation is conscious processing. It's not idly sitting there doing nothing. You meditate to study, to uncover knowledge, to discover knowledge. The whole crown chakra is all about knowledge. You are accessing knowledge in that state. It's knowing what knowledge you need to access or what knowledge you need to attain. Stillness is a beautiful thing, but it is kind of overrated. It's not the beginning. It's not the be all and end all of your meditation. The stillness is just that point, knowing that you can hit that point whenever you need to. Just wait a minute, I just need a moment to think about this. I need a moment to just let me process this for a moment. It's that the conscious processing starts in the stillness. There it is. Don't be afraid.
The processing you talked about right there was one quote in the book that really struck me. And what you said was that reality is merely a predetermined experience comprised of the past and present experiences of life. If the content in your past is not useful, navigate your body in the present to more useful experiences. Learn and experience new things so that you have more content to develop healthier predetermined states that govern your experience of life. I found that a very valuable concept as a way to improve over time and as a way to shed, if you will, unhealthy thoughts and patterns of existence. Can you tackle what that means for you and how you use that perhaps with some of your clients?
Yeah. Again, there's two different ways you can meditate. You're either meditating to kind of be more present, or you're meditating to understand the present, to really make sense of what's going on. And so if you're meditating to be more present, then what you're essentially doing with that whole predetermined state is, right, I don't have anything in my experience of life in order to navigate through this experience called life. I have nothing to really, like, what am I here for? What am I doing? I don't really understand much about myself, about my reason to exist. Well, then that gives you the green light and the freedom to try anything and everything. See what life has to offer. Challenge life. Let's see where you can take me. Say yes a little bit more. Develop the context you need in order to create an idea. Because, for example, like I have clients who love creating music, but they don't understand chords or anything. They just love music and they don't quite sure why. And I've got like clients saying they can see shapes as music. They see like a stop sign, and that to them is like a musical tone. I was like, right, okay, so now you need to know that's how that ignites your mind and your intelligence. Navigate to more experiences where you're consuming more shapes, where you can see an abundance of new experiences in life. And that will then give you more ammo to create different types of music and maybe tap into your genius a little bit more. You have the reality that you're experiencing. You can either bring reality out and create something, or you can just experience creation as is. But the only way you're going to be able to create something is when you have a truth to create from, when you know what you're creating. This is going to get quite esoteric, so I'm going to try and simplify a little bit more. So when you're creating a reality, a reality comprised of the past, the present, and the future states of being, and it comes together, it's almost like your meta view of the world, your belief system, your idea. As long as the world, it's the layer in which you view the world in, based on your experiences that you had as a kid, based on the experiences that you've had recently. They're basically helping you keep you alive, keep you surviving, keep you navigating through the world in a healthy and happy manner. But if there's nothing inspiring you, if there's nothing in your past that really makes you feel as if if there's nothing really encouraging you, or there's no sense of reality in your mind that makes you feel as if life is worth living, especially, then you have no choice but to consume more information. It's like your toolbox to create ideas and stuff is empty. You need inspiration. You are creator experiencing creation, and what you're experiencing is, quite frankly, crap. So the context in which you're experiencing that creation needs to change. The data that you've consumed sucks. Need more data. Go on an adventure. Go traveling. Go find, literally use the cliche, go find yourself. Go find some sort of experience in the world that will inspire you to create and bring something out, to inspire you to understand reality for yourself. On the other hand, it's that whole sense of, if you're experiencing an idea, let's just say you have this groundbreaking idea in your mind. You don't know what it is. You don't know why it's there. But you have this feeling, you have this energy, you have this something within you that you know that you can bring into the world, but you have no clue what it is. It's because you don't have the data in order to interpret it. Like what you're experiencing there is a higher truth, but there's nothing in your experience of life that can enable you to give context to that higher truth. It's like you have an idea for a triangle, but all you're living in is a world full of squares. How on earth are you going to come up with the idea of a triangle when all you're literally experiencing is nothing but squares in the world? All the data in your mind is square. All the new ideas and information that you've been presented to you is square. But you're thinking of this triangle, but no context in order to bring it into the world. Like, why would it, there's a whole different shape out there that you need to figure out. So what happens is you navigate through the world and you consume alternative things. You try and broaden a color palette, if you will, so that you can start contextualizing whatever idea or essence that you have. There are people in this world who live lifetimes feeling like, there's a reason why I'm here, but I don't know why I'm here. It's because that right there is an example of someone who just doesn't have the subconscious context to be able to understand why they're here. There's no data, there's no learning, there's no lesson that they've come across that said, hey, by the way, did you know that you can create something brand new? Did you know that you are here to bring in something that doesn't even exist in this world yet? Do you know that you are merely experiencing the present moment, that the future is yours to create? That the past is basically experiences that have already expired? The future is not predetermined. We can talk on a higher scale, but generally speaking, to most of us, what we make of our lives is what we create them to be. And we can only create with the tools that we have in our minds. If those tools suck, if those tools aren't encouraging us to create what we want and just really restricting our ability to create, then we need more tools. We need more experience. We need more inspiration. The best example of this is when I'm working with LGBTQ youth, because the world is very restrictive in their experience, right? There's not those narratives that they can latch onto to enable them to express who they are and what they're about. Therefore, the world becomes a very uninspiring experience. So they need to go out and venture, take a few more risks and go out into the world and explore what the world really has to offer. Find their little pocket of experience where they can bring their reality, their creation to life, to be able to know what colors that appease them. If, for example, if someone's never ever seen the color red before and all of a sudden they embark on an experience and see the color red, it's like, hang on a minute, there's this color just waiting for me to find. That was my pilgrimage. I just had to find this one color to be able to create this thing and put this piece together. I mean, what you're starting, that quote is a very esoteric, like it's a part of the book whereby I'm explaining how the mind generates reality. I'm explaining doing my best to explain how the mind generates reality. And in order to comprehend all of that, ayahuasca retreats, my clients who come back from ayahuasca retreats, you've got one client saying they met Jesus, another one saying they met Krishna, another one saying they met Buddha. It's like you all met with the same energy. It's just a subconscious context in your mind, which you wrapped around it. You only know about Jesus, you only know about Buddha, and you only know about Krishna. That's the only reason why your experiences differ, but the energy you're connecting to is probably the same. It's kind of like that thing with reality. Your experience that you're having in life is all based on the data that's just stuck in your mind. If you don't go on adventures to challenge that data or put new data in there, good luck coming up with a new idea. Good luck, entrepreneurial clients. You want the next groundbreaking idea? Maybe you step away from the experience of life that you're having and venture into a new one. Get some more colors in your color palette, and maybe, just maybe, you'll stumble upon that great groundbreaking idea that'll change life.
We're going to come back to ayahuasca, but before we come back to that, for most of that topic, you were talking about the data and going out and getting new data. Towards the end, you mentioned something else that I think is really important. You also mentioned tools. And so in your searching, in your experience, in your learning, you're not only looking for more and better data, you're also looking for more and better tools, filters, lenses to process that data, because you may have in fact actually been getting, and I could be wrong here, but you may have in fact earlier in your life been getting good data, but you didn't necessarily have the right tools to process that data. And so in your experiencing and in your searching, you're looking for both of those things, if I'm understanding you correctly. Both get more data, because you really can't know it all or have the right answers if you haven't seen enough. And that comes back to your comment earlier about needing those nine years of enjoyable and yet possibly wayward living to be able to figure out, okay, what's the real path? But you also need the tools to do it. And so now jumping back to ayahuasca. The ayahuasca, DMT, these are all ways to get you there very quickly. But these are all states, and these are all the answers that come from all of these. You get the same answers from meditation, if I'm not mistaken. If you're doing it well, or not well, but if you're doing it enough and you're practicing, you can get to the same spot. And I think that's what I've been hearing from you throughout the conversation, is how you're using the meditation, what you're doing when you're in that stillness, what answers are you seeking. Is that accurate?
With ayahuasca and psychedelics, magic, like the psilocybin mushrooms, and they just open your body up to it. Ultimately, all you're doing, it's just like they can open you up to it, but how many people have I come across that said they found this thing, oh my God, it changed their life around. 6 months later, they're back at it. It really changed your life that much that you had to go back to it? It was that profound that if it was that profound, you shouldn't even need to go back to it. It should have been a rigid belief that literally transformed your life, and what, you just need a top up now to understand it again? Is that what I'm hearing? Like, this usually the clients who come from the psychedelic background. It's like meditation, the difference between meditation and psychedelics. There's loads, but meditation, you're consciously expanding this field. But the thing is with meditation, every time you do it, you expand this field. I didn't cater that. You expand this field, but each time you do, it remains open. You attain knowledge, but you can't unknow that knowledge. With a psychedelic, you've literally consumed something. That goes, field opens up. Then what happens after the psychedelic's done? It starts closing in.
Closing back down.
And that's the key difference. With meditation, you are constantly opening it up and it stays open. Because what happens is, again, the technique that I'm teaching is not teaching you how to meditate in one sitting. It's teaching you how to repeat and get back into the meditative state in one sitting, and exercising that over and over and over again until you found the perfect breath, your control breath. You found the perfect position. You found it. You found the perfect way to lock in, and you know when it's basically ready, set, go, meditate. You know, that's the first part of your training. The process is learning how to train your mind to get into that state of meditation. Once you figure that out, you'll be meditating 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, no problem. And also the thing is, you start realizing that a lot of psychedelics, again, they only affect your body. They can only affect your body. They can open your body up. All it's doing is activating all the intelligence you have within your body. But what's happening is you're relying on the psychedelic now to do that for you. You're not learning how to do that for yourself. How are you learning to open up these energy centers in your body? How are you learning to access these heightened states of awareness, if not without said psychedelic?
So what you often see, the way we describe it to people, is when you're using the psychedelics, sure, they might take you to the top of the mountain and show you the answer. But when you wake up, you're at the bottom of the mountain. You have to figure out how to get up there. And that's what a lot of people seem to miss, is you saw where you should be or need to be. But when you wake up, you're down here. You have to actually walk up that mountain. You have to change your life. You have to what we've been talking about this whole time about meditation, you have to integrate what you learned into your behaviors, or what you saw is never going to become a reality.
For most people, what they learn in psychedelics is too much to integrate.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's why meditation is much more of a mindful process, because you're learning based on your current state of life. You're learning based on what you can handle and how you have been operating. Whenever I've done a psychedelic, all I've understood to do is make sure that I'm really fit and healthy. Like, I go running for a few weeks first. I'll go get really physically fit and mentally fit, meditate, train my mind. Because I don't want the psychedelic to take away from my experience. I want it to enhance it. It goes breath, consciousness, and then the psychedelic energy. Wherever I choose to focus, my breath and prana will follow, and my psychedelic energy will follow too. It comes behind me. Without meditation, the psychedelic becomes the meditation. Just like an app becomes your meditation, the guided meditation becomes your meditation. Why would you let the psychedelic or the app or the music or whatever do the meditating for you? Counterproductive.
I chuckled a little when you made that app comment, because I went to a silent retreat about a little over a year ago, Terry, and one of the guys that I carpooled with him from the airport. There was 4 of us that carpooled to the retreat center and back. One of the locals picked us up. Great experience. And this person was there as a fulfillment of their education requirement. And they had never actually meditated for a sustained period of time. And they had never meditated without an app. So they felt they were quite mindful because they did their Calm app or whichever app they were using, and they did it every day and thought, okay, life's great. Like, I always meditate. And then all of a sudden they hit the gong and 45 minutes, no talking. No one saying, bring your attention back to your breath, right? So all week long, I just, you're not supposed to make eye contact, supposed to be silent, stare at the ground, noble silence. And when I did catch him out of the corner of my eye, he looked more and more miserable as the week went on. And when we were carpooling back to the airport, he explained to us how freaked out he was by this process, because all he had ever done was meditate with his app. And he was so uncomfortable that entire week without having that person in his ear telling him when to breathe, what to focus on, what to do. And he said if it weren't for his teaching requirement, he effectively had a nervous breakdown. He would have left after day 1. It was incredible.
And what's he teaching? Meditation?
He's a psychologist, and he is integrating the mindful, I might get this, mindful self-compassion. So there's 2 teachings that tie in: mindful-based stress reduction, MBSR, and then there's MSC, I think it is the mindful self-compassion. And to your point, I chuckled a little because I thought, how can you teach mindful self-compassion if, a 45-minute meditation is enough to send you into into a nervous breakdown, into a nervous breakdown.
So when there's all these questions you've asked me about mindfulness, I'm just like, I can't. Mindfulness is not a meditation. I have to remind people this over and over and over again. But because so much money and investment and branding's gone into it, no one dare question it because I've invested $3,000 in this mindfulness practice and it's all bollocks. Because why? Mindfulness is an integration. Mindfulness is to be aware of what's going on. It's not a meditation. Meditation is to process what's going on, to really study it and understand it. To be aware is to be present. Like there's a part between waking, like that you've ended your meditation and you're opening up your eyes. Breathe, position, lock, meditate, integrate. That last step, that's where mindfulness develops. And you develop it before you open your eyes. What's the next thing you got to say? What's the next email you got to send? What's the things that you need to do next in order to integrate and act upon the awareness that you've raised? Mindfulness comes after your meditation. Mindfulness is not your meditation. And it's a very unpopular opinion because everyone's so focused on mindfulness practice. And I'm not dismissing it completely, but really mindfulness is like a snowflake on an ice cube of what this whole meditation is. Mindfulness is, again, it's that Western approach to meditation because I can do it. I can really focus on my physical senses. I can go from sight to sound to taste and touch. I'm meditating. Look at me go. It's that same Western mentality that needs to change. Move beyond mindfulness.
Terry, you also, so last question before I talk about how our listeners can find you and whether there's anything else you want to dive into. You talk about 3 steps on the journey to transcendence. Please correct me if my pronunciation is wrong. Maya, Atman, and Samadhi?
Yeah, Maya, Atma, Samadhi.
And can you take our listeners through what each of those stages is on their journey?
Oh, this is your last question. This is like, you've made the questions you've asked are massive. Okay, right. Maya, Atma, Samadhi. Funny enough, I'm teaching this to the group tomorrow. So Maya, these aren't necessarily steps. These are tiers of awareness one can measure towards transcendence. Making it to transcendence requires a certain appreciation of the way life is. And accepting Maya Tier 1 is to accept all and any reality as an illusion. This is where, do you know how I was talking earlier about teaching people who are suicidal and with severe mental health issues, meditation? This is where we start. I teach them Maya. I was like, right, for you now in this meditation, anything you experience, whether it's an emotional pain, anything that goes on in the mind, it is an illusion. It is not real. Any sound that you hear with your senses, any sight, anything that you experience with the physical senses, anything you experience in memory, in your mind, all illusions. That's what you have to accept first. If you want to transcend and hit those high and heights, treat everything as if it's not real. It's an illusion that's trying to grip you. It's trying to consume you. Don't believe me if I poke you right now and you're reacting to that me poking you, that poking is no longer an illusion. You are bothered by it. It's real for you. Okay, so now reality for you is now the poking. You are now reacted. You are attached to that poking. You become the poking. I now own you. The illusion now owns you because you're responding to it. If I'm yelling at you, I'm the illusion, remember. You're responding to an illusion. You are reacting to an illusion. It's a mirage. It's not real. It's hard to see because you can feel the pain physically and it's hard to, but I mean, we can get into that a little later or maybe on another time, but the whole idea of reality is an illusion is because it's constantly reshaping and molding. It's constantly evolving. Do you look the same as you looked when you were 2 years old? Do you look the same as when you were 5 years old? Your body itself is an illusion. It regenerates, it grows, it changes shape. Literally, it just takes 80 years to do so, 80 years, 90 years to continue growing through the illusion. So life is constantly a state of illusion. It's just a slow evolutionary process. Anything in your mind, if I asked you to think about what you ate for breakfast this morning, but I said go to your dinner table and sit at breakfast as if you're a dinosaur, can you not tell me that's not an illusion? There's a literal illusion for you. Your memories are merely energies that you are reviving from the past. You have complete creative control over them. You want to manipulate and change your memories? By all means, play around with them and realize how elusive they are too. You can change the color of your dinner plate. You can change the people who you are having dinner with. You can imagine anything. Everything is an illusion in your mind. You don't believe me? Try and think of a lemon. Now change that lemon red. Change the color of cut the lemon open and out comes a bunch of jelly beans. You can create that illusion in your head for every 5 minutes. So accepting Maya is that accepting that any experience that you are having in life, be it in your mind or with your body, is a complete illusion. The reason why is because we want to get consciousness, the conscious entity, moving into Atma. So here is where it gets very esoteric now. You have the body, you have the body of the mind, and then you have the body of the soul. You as consciousness navigate between all three, essentially. And this is very basic terms. When you're at your physical senses, if I came to you right now and just like, I don't know, swung a bat and hit you across the head, you're going to experience the body of the body very intensely. Okay. But let's say if I said something to you, let's say we met at a dinner party and I said something that really pissed you off, and you're sitting at home and you can't let that thing go that I said. And you're stuck in the body of the mind now. You're really in that, right? So you've moved consciousness, like consciousness experience with the body experience in the mind. It's only when you can move consciousness into the body of soul and you realize, oh, what is this thing? Realizing Atma, tier 2, is when the journey moves up. Basically, everything of the body has to be an illusion. Everything as the mind has to be an illusion. Remember, the journey of meditation is to discover the truth. What is the truth? To expand consciousness to realms of truth. Well, in order to do that, you've got to question everything and treat everything like an illusion. How can you accept something as true if you're trying to find it? If you're 100% sure that this is the truth, by all means, integrate it and move your life forward. But if your problems aren't unsolved, sounds like you need to find a better truth. And so it's about really detaching and letting go and treating every single thing that you experience, even the good stuff, as illusion. Because what will happen is, imagine this, your consciousness. You're moving from the experiences of your physical senses, from your body. Now you're going up into the tier of your mind, and there's beautiful like ideas about, there's your past, and you forget the past. That was all in the past. I'm detaching from all of that. I'm moving up. Oh, wow, look at the hopes for the future, this utopia. Look at this beautiful state. And this is usually where most psychedelic people who take psychedelics kind of arrive at. Like, whoa, this is amazing. This is great. I've figured it all out. I understand it all. That too has to be an illusion. If you accept that as real, you're just going to go there, come back into your life, and that's where your belief system stops. But you've got to reject that too. You've got to reject everything, your hopes and aspirations, your dreams, your identity, everything. You're talking about existing as a conscious entity and nothing more. You have to let go of your everything. I'm not saying to forget. I'm just saying for a moment, detach. There's going to get to points where you're going to be moving so high into transcendence where you're going to feel the energy of lost loved ones or loved ones in your life. I remember I had this one guy in one of my classes meditating, and he was in tears because he was meditating to a certain depth, and all he could feel was like the love of his kids calling him back. Even then, that's a key point now. Are you going to let your attachment come bring you back from your transcendence? And so if he accepted that point, if he accepted that as mine, he'd continue moving up. But if he accepted that as, no, that's the truth, then the way he comes back down. So you need to get to the point until you realize Atma. And Atma is Sanskrit for lack of a better term, soul. And there's a whole lesson that I took out of the book because it was too esoteric, and it's going to be a whole nother book for me to explain it. But Atma, once you realize Atma, it's kind of like, do you know how it's basically like a sperm meeting the egg? It's like, oh, now I can create life, oh, I'm something now, I exist as something now. So your consciousness is like a little sperm, and Atma is like this egg, for lack of a better analogy. And consciousness is you, this little kind of thing wiggling around trying to enter the soul. It's almost like nestling into the soul, and that's where your transcendental journey begins. Because you are now in an experience that is equal to the creator. I do this technique with most of my clients as well when we're doing a transcendental classes. Imagine this piece of paper is all consciousness. It's everything that you experience, right? This paper is God. This paper is the universe. This paper is the source of all creation itself. Your soul is like that. But the thing is, what you're doing essentially in meditation is you're moving consciousness into this little piece of paper, which then only once you're in here can you make the journey and understand how to make the journey back to source, because you're familiar with it now. You recognize it. You know what to sustain. But what you're doing in meditation is, this is going to be really difficult to explain. So this is going to go into a story of creation for you. Let's just say This is how it all started. This is before the Big Bang, right? Big Bang occurred, boom. Right, and now basically this is the soul. This is the piece that came off the big piece. This is source, and this is a piece of source. This is your soul. So as this drifted away from the source, everything in between, it's almost like that's creation. You exist somewhere between here and here. It can go up or down, wherever way you want to do it. What you're doing with consciousness is you're moving from somewhere where you exist in between these two states into this, so that you recognize how to get to this or be familiar with this. You're moving consciousness into a state, and this is so difficult to explain, but you're moving consciousness into a state whereby you're existing as your more truer nature. Like, it's hard for us to comprehend because we're so used to and so connected to our physical bodies. You're going from a finite state to an infinite state. But what's happening in meditation, the goal of meditation is to move conscious awareness into that infinite state. That's what the Buddhist monks are doing. That's what the sadhus are doing. They're moving consciousness into that infinite state. If you continue to move consciousness beyond it, eventually you will lose that consciousness of the body and you will transcend and leave the body behind. If you reach the body of the soul and you're like, okay, I've figured out everything I need to figure out, and you come back to life, you become enlightened. You are enlightened to the truth. And so that journey into the soul, and the thing is, you keep rejecting until you can't reject no more. And that's what you got to keep doing if you want to hit the transcendental journey. So you accept Maya all the way up until you realize Atma. You enter the soul. And once you realize Atma, only then can you start beginning to experience Samadhi, which is the enlightened, more like beautiful state.
You've effectively connected the pieces.
Yeah.
You're now connected back to the whole. Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a journey. Yeah, when I've got my presentation slides and my whiteboard and stuff, I can explain it a lot better. And the Om symbol comes in there because that's what confuses a lot of people as well, is the Om. The Om is just a sound. It's like, imagine like the Big Bang, but imagine that obviously you have to comprehend the size of that bang. And you've got to comprehend, like, if that bang happened, there's a sound that's still resonating through the universe. And that sound is Om. So it's like, boom, like it just exploded and the sound was Om.
It just resonates.
Om, and that's
it just resonates through us all. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a whole class on the Om, but we won't go there today.
All right, Terry. So where can our listeners find you?
Just go to meditatethebook.com and you can get access to go get the book for yourself. You can get access to my meditation starter pack. And I know we went quite esoteric with conversations today, but I promise you, I try and teach meditation and focus my efforts on the early stages. Because once you've got the groundwork done, getting to those higher states, you can get yourself. It's nothing that you need to learn. It's something you can discover.
Yeah, and the book is very good at taking you through the basics. It's not diving straight into the esoteric, even if some of the conversation between Terry and I was. And Terry, social media, anywhere you want to guide people to on that? Yeah,
Meditate the Book again. That's the social media handles for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But yeah, and what I want to encourage more people to do is get access. You know, you don't have to make an investment. You just go get the starter pack. It's free. If you want to learn the basics and understand what meditation is from the core, learn how to meditate, discover it. And the only reason why I'm so pushing, like, people, please meditate, because you will save thousands and thousands of dollars on so many alternative therapies that are just wasting your time and money. You don't need to retreat. Why spend money on sitting in silence? Really makes no sense. It's just meditate. You have the intelligence. You have it there. It's easy to do. As long as you keep restoring that controlled breath, you'll be fine. You'll sail through this thing.
Excellent. So we'll get a link for all of your social media and for your website in the show notes. And is there one final message that you want to leave people with that we might not have covered?
The only message, when I get asked this question on every interview, I'm just saying that I'm just repeating the same thing. Whenever in doubt, just go back to breath. Just breathe. Literally. You can tell everything you need to learn or know about life with your breath. You know when you're in love, you know when you're scared, you know when you're angry. And as long as you can pull yourself back out of that and restore control, you'll know whether it's right for you or not.
Fabulous. Thank you, Terry. We went over time. Really appreciated having you on and having this conversation. It was really enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Pursuit of Learning. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and head over to our website, thepursuitoflearning.com, where you will find our show notes, transcripts, and more. If you like what you see, sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, your host in learning, Clint Murphy.